Hey everybody, this is Michael Bryson for This is Bodybuilding. I believe this is episode 4 of the This is Bodybuilding podcast series. Basically today, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over the 2020 This is Bodybuilding year-end awards. This is something I've been doing for several years now on This is Bodybuilding on Instagram, and I thought I would just review it now here for this podcast. There's always a certain amount of categories, and I change it around every now and then, every so often through the years. I've changed the categories or the awards involved. Of course, there's the male competitor of the year. There's female competitor of the year. I usually do a comeback of the year. This year I did a male and a female comeback, as there were two huge legends of the sport who returned after not competing in last year's Olympia. I did a Lifetime Achievement Award. That was the first time I've done that. I think it's something I'm going to try to continue as long as every year there's someone who is either retiring or just reaches a huge milestone in their career. I think it's something that would be sort of exciting and apropos for the year-end awards. I do a Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year, Rivalry of the Year, and I usually do, but not always, an Inspirational Competitor of the Year and a Most Improved Competitor of the Year. And every year I also do what I call the Beto Abaspor Memorial Award. This is for someone who passed during the course of the year. And this year, in 2020, unfortunately, we lost someone very important to the sport. And I bestowed this award on him. So I'll start actually with that award, I imagine. It was given posthumously, of course, as it always will be, to the late, great Luke Sando. Luke, he's a guy who really motivated and moved a lot of people in the sport. He had tremendous fan appeal. Unfortunately, in May, he passed away. The official ruling is that he passed away of heart failure. There's been rumors, but it doesn't really matter how he passed away as much as it does how he lived. And he was a huge inspiration to many people. And I've only met him. I met him 2 different occasions, both at Arnold Classics, and both times the guy was just super kind, very friendly, very humble. He just had a humongous future ahead of him. Huge bodybuilder, great proportions. He had a lot of mass, but he controlled that midsection very well. He hit a very good vacuum pose, actually, with his front double bicep. Just an incredible athlete whose potential was never quite reached, and he reached, I think, 3rd place in 2019 at the Arnold Classic, I believe, and his future was so bright. He was definitely going to be a top contender for not just for the Arnold Classic title, but for the Olympia title itself, or the title of Mr. Olympia. So the bodybuilding community mourns his passing, and I think he is an apt recipient of this most unfortunate, actually, award. Beto Abaspor, Beatola Abaspor, passed away years ago now, and I don't know off the top of my head what it was. I think it was 2014, 2015. No, maybe even a little bit later than that. But he was a tremendous bodybuilder, 212 competitor who did very well for himself and could have possibly have been a future 212 Olympia champion if he hadn't passed away at a young age himself. And he was someone who I met and spoke with on a couple occasions, and just a lovely, lovely human being, and that's why I named this award after him. For Most Improved Competitor of the Year, I went with Chris Bumstead. There were a lot of guys who could have possibly have won this title, or award, I should say. In Classic Physique, Terrence Ruffin, who placed second to Chris Bumstead, at the Olympia this year. He improved tremendously this year. He placed second also at the Arnold Classic to Alex Cabanero, and then he placed second here to Chris, while Alex placed fourth, actually, in the Olympia. Also a fantastic bodybuilder and classic physique competitor himself. But Terrence Ruffin, someone who definitely could have been, was definitely considered for this title, as was the 212 Olympia champion Sean Clarita. Sean improves every single year. It's unbelievable how much he improves. He's grown. I first saw him compete at the New York Pro his rookie year, and now I'm again spacing out on what year that was, but he was, I think, 140 pounds, maybe 145, and he was up around 177, ripped to shreds on the Olympia stage this year. He looked amazing. He placed second in this Olympia, first in this Olympia by 1 point to last year's champion, Kamal. But man, I just thought he looked crazy good and should. I didn't think it was a question as to who was the winner of the 212 Olympia this year at all. He could definitely have been given this award. So could have Janet Leog, who won the Olympia for the first time. She's been a runner-up and a top 5 competitor for years. She made great improvements to her physique. Especially her backside, her glutes, I should say, very, very improved, and she just looked phenomenal. She's always been right there, ready to win the title. This year she did. Someone else who could have easily been given this award. But I went with Chris Bumstead because Chris, last year he won the Olympia. The year before that, I think for 2 years prior to that, he placed second at the Olympia in classic physique. The year before he won in 2018, he placed second to Brian by 1 point. There's a 1 point difference. And then last year when he won, there was another 1 point difference, but this time Brian was in second. And this year, Chris won his second Olympia title. He won it with straight first, and there was nothing anyone could have done to stop him from winning. He was amazing. Before, I've always said, he's had an amazing structure to his physique. He has a classic look. He's an amazing poser. He looks great, but he had some holes in his armor, some chinks in his armor, some holes in his arsenal. He was lacking great arms, particularly biceps, and his back was wide from the front. He looked great in the front lat spread. He just didn't have depth of detail and thickness to that back for the back double bicep shot, which is a pose that is judged in classic physique. And it was a weak spot that I thought perhaps he didn't even. I thought he was given a couple of gifts. Well, now I cannot say this whatsoever about this year, man. I've never seen a back come up that much in 1 year's time. I mean, any body part to improve in a year drastically is, hard to do. But the back is such an intricate collection of muscles, a muscle group, that it just to improve as much as it did in 1 year is mind-boggling. And I put up a picture on Instagram of him from last year to this year in the back double bicep. And even Phil Heath, who's known for have perhaps the best back double bicep of all time, commented on the post about how it blows the mind how someone can improve the back as much as Chris Bumstead did. And his arms came up in size as well. He just looked phenomenal. There was nothing missing on Chris now. He's just a complete bodybuilder who you could put him on that 1988 Olympia stage against guys like Barry DeMay and Rich Gaspari and Lee Haney, and he would do very well for himself in open bodybuilding back in what I consider one of the great Olympias of all time, the 1988 Mr. Olympia. That period of time, men's bodybuilders looked they looked very classic, like classic physique, and that's what Chris is, and he so very much exemplifies that title, that division. There's I don't know. It's going to take something very special to knock Chris off of that spot. Yeah. And talking about Chris and talking about Breon, they also won Rivalry of the Year, the 2020 This Is Bodybuilding Rivalry of the Year. I gave to Chris and Breon. Now, Breon placed third, but when I'm talking about rivalries, I'm not talking about just like how close a contest was between people. Truly, the closest competitors in that show were Breon and Terrence, who placed second. I think there was a 1 point difference between the two of them. It was something very close. But the rivalry is the heat that's been between those two guys, and I don't mean like hatred or anything like that, but I mean like it's a heated rivalry for years. People have thought there's been fans of Breon, there still are the Breon fans and the Bumstead fans, C-Bum, and sometimes people get too athlete oriented. I'm more sport oriented, so I just love that division itself, and both of those guys are just amazing. And so that was the rivalry going into the show. It was the build-up. That was what everyone wanted to see. They couldn't wait to see again Breon next to Chris and see what would happen. And as it panned out, Chris won. Breon placed a very close third to Terrence and Chris. So I still consider that the greatest rivalry of the year. The other rivalry that I had up there really high, and I put it up to fan vote actually this year, along with Chris and Breon, I had Phil Heath and Brandon Curry. And again, these guys didn't finish. Neither of them finished first for the Olympia this year. They were second and third. Brandon second and Phil third. I had it reversed. I had it the other way around personally. Just thought Phil was a little more conditioned and also just still a more complete bodybuilder, the most complete bodybuilder perhaps up there, except for his injured midsection, which again I didn't find to be particularly an eyesore this year, especially during the mandatory poses, the judged portion of the show. But they were the rivalry of the big rivalry of the men's open bodybuilding division anyway, because that was what everyone was wanting to see at the Olympia. That was sort of the selling point of this year's Olympia. No one saw Big Ramy coming from behind and actually taking the show. His last Olympia in 2018, he didn't even make the top 5. He wasn't qualified for last year's Olympia. He didn't compete in last year's Olympia. Partially because of I think he had an injury or something. I'll be honest with you, I don't really recall. I think he was an injury. I don't know if he had a surgery, but he didn't compete at last year's Olympia, or the 2019 Olympia, I should say. And then 2020, I think everyone thought he was going to do very, very well, and that he was in the back of people's minds as someone who could possibly win. But by and large, this was going to be the Phil and Brandon show, and that's what everyone was chiming about and talking about leading up to the show. So that was the rivalry, and I still think it is a rivalry, more so than those guys perhaps being competitively spirited against Big Ramy. I think that they are in each other's minds, and so I would definitely consider that more of a rivalry than Big Ramy versus anybody at this point. But I put it up to fan vote, and fans voted for Breon and C-Bum, and I think that was it's a good choice. It was a tough choice between the two of them. For Coach of the Year, I went with Chad Nichols. Chad is one of the great gurus of all time. I won't even tell you all the champions that he's made, but I think everyone knows he was the coach for Ronnie Coleman for 8 straight Olympia wins, as well as some other Olympia placings that he did very, very well in. He coached his own wife, Kim Chavinsky, who won 4 consecutive Ms. Olympia titles, one of the greatest female bodybuilders of all time, in my opinion. I would put her in my top 4, definitely, without question. So he coached them. He also coached Flex Wheeler to Arnold Classic wins, and just many other champions. He's one of the greatest of all time. And this year he took Big Ramy to where I think that many of us had started thinking Big Ramy never would get to. When we first saw him in 2013, I think everyone thought this guy is possibly and probably the next Mr. Olympia. And it just never happened until this year when Chad took over. And man, it was Ramy at his best. It was a phenomenal showing and a great Olympia win. They were together also at the Arnold Classic, but that was the first show I believe that they did together. And Ramy placed third at the Arnold Classic, a very, very good showing. But it, sometimes it takes a little bit to learn a person's body, I think. And actually, Ramy looked better at finals than he did pre-judging for the Arnold Classic, but he looked even better than that at this this Olympia, I should say. I would say it's the best I've ever seen him, with possible exception of his first showing, but at that New York Pro in 2013 that he won, I saw him there, and I was very, very close to the stage for that show, and I could see him up close, and man, he was just so much bigger than everybody, and still had that tight waist and those great abs. He has gotten bigger since then, but he wasn't at his biggest at this show. They didn't bring him in at whatever they've said in the past, 316 pounds, 307 pounds. I think he was 290 pounds or so at this Olympia, and it was a sweet spot. He had this amazing size, and there was more definition and slight more separation even in his quads, which was something that he was lacking in the past. But whatever they did, Chad just brought Ramy in at his best. And so, Coach of the Year or Guru of the Year, whatever you want to call it, Chad Nichols. Inspirational Competitor of the Year. I picked James Hollingshed, and that's because, James won a couple shows this year, and he was best friends with Luke Sandow, who passed away. And it was a really tough time for him. He made it through, and more than made it through. He also is someone that could have been mentioned in the Most Improved Competitor of the Year, because man, he improved tremendously. He was always a big guy. His back too is something that was his what I thought his weakest point, and it improved greatly this year. He looked amazing at both shows. He was qualified for the Olympia. He didn't enter the Olympia. He's holding off for one more year, I think. It was a lot for him, I think, to do those two shows and to come in as well as he did for both of those shows, going through what he was going through. Look, everyone was going through rough times this year. It was, the year of COVID-19, and prepping for these shows for everyone was difficult. And he had to pile on top of that the loss of one of his best friends and brothers, and Luke. And I'm sure there were other competitors who lost people during the course of this time, but it was very public and well known what James went through, and he went through it like a champion, like the champion he is. And I think many of his fans and many of Luke's fans were moved greatly. I know that it affected me, and it inspired me. And to me, James was a very worthy recipient of the 2020 This is Bodybuilding Inspirational Competitor of the Year award. So moving on to Rookie of the Year. Rookie of the Year, to me, there wasn't a question about this. A lot of people have mentioned Nick Walker. Nick is amazing, and he did very well in the show that he competed in, his pro show, his pro debut, and he has got a humongous future. He's got a humongous everything. The guy's just enormous. And I'm sure he's going to be winning shows in 2021, and I can see him doing very, very well in the future. on the Olympia stage. He's a monster, and he and his coach Matt Jansen have done great things this year in his rookie year. But I went with Rachel Daniels, the real Lois Lane. Rachel, she won the Junior USAs, I believe, in women's physique, and shortly thereafter made her pro debut at the New York Pro, and she won the show. This is not a small show. This is one of the biggest shows. I think it's next to it's the third biggest show in the world, or was this year anyway, after the Olympia and the Arnold. And she was just amazing. She won it handily. Rachel's got this style. First off, her physique is great. There are things I think that, yes, will improve over time, but her conditioning, she nails her conditioning phenomenally well, and her posing is on another level. It's something very, very special. And anyway, she won the New York Pro handily, and to me, that wins Rookie of the Year. But she also went on to the Olympia and did exceptionally well for herself. She placed in the top 7 to make the single digits in the Olympia in women's physique in your rookie year is, a tremendous accomplishment, and top 7 is awesome. So I thought Rachel Daniels was the unquestionable winner and recipient for the 2020 This is Bodybuilding Rookie of the Year award. This year, I did a couple of different things. I added the Lifetime Achievement Award, and I gave it to a guy, maybe you've heard of him. His name is Dexter Jackson. I think Dexter is one of the greatest legends of all time in the sport of professional bodybuilding. And that's just a no-brainer. This year, he retired after the Olympia. Unfortunately, he placed 9th this year. It was not one of his best showings, but Dexter... man, he has set record after record. Actually, I'm going to pull up my post here because I have some facts to spew about him. First off, he has competed in a record 20 Mr. Olympias. No one else in the history of the Olympia, it's been around since 1965. We've never missed a year since then. He has competed in 20 contests, which is far more than anyone else. I believe Albert Beckles may have competed in I don't even know. So I'm not even going to speak to that. I just know that this is the record, and I also know that he placed in the top 5 15 times, which is also a record. No one else in history has placed in the top 5 15 times in the Olympia. And of course, he won the Olympia in 2008, making him one of only 16 guys to have ever won the title since 1965. And beyond that, he has won the most pro shows of any bodybuilder in the history of the sport. He's won 29 pro shows. He fell one shy of 30, but there's no one else that's close. Ronnie Coleman had 26 wins. Of course, he's retired, and the other guys who were close or had 20-plus wins, guys like Kevin Levrone, Vince Taylor, these guys are retired as well. So I don't see anyone breaking Dexter's record of 29 pro wins. In those 29 pro wins, he won 5 Arnold Classics, and that is also a record. No one has won 5 Arnold Classics. I'm talking about the big Arnold Classic in Columbus, Ohio. He's won numerous other Arnold Classics internationally. I think he has a total of 9, if I'm not mistaken. But that 5 in Columbus, that's a record that I don't think we'll see broken. That's very impressive. There's no one. Well, actually, William Bonac has 2, and he is currently competing. So the most beyond the before Dexter's record is Flex Wheeler, who won 4, and Jay Cutler won 3 consecutive Arnold Classics. I think Kai Green has also won 3 Arnold Classics. But most of those guys are retired. We think Kai is retired. But William Bonac, who's still competing, he has 2 wins under his belt. But anyway, all these achievements to me, I mean, there's no one else who comes close to that in terms of this year, retirement year for Dexter Jackson. I think he was a great first choice for the first ever Lifetime Achievement Award for This Is Bodybuilding's year-end awards. I also did something else a little differently this year in that I did 2 Comeback of the Year awards. I did one for male and I did one for female because returning to the stage this year, the Olympia stage, were 2 of the greatest legends in the history of bodybuilding. Oksana Grishina, 4-time fitness Olympia champion, multiple Miss International Fitness Championships she's won as well, and Phil Heath, the 7-time Mr. Olympia. Both of these legends returned to the stage this year in 2020, and I gave Oksana, of course, female Comeback of the Year, and Phil, the male Comeback of the Year. They did exceptionally well. Like I said, Phil placed 3rd in the Olympia. I had him 2nd, and really challenging Rami very closely. But he placed 3rd. And Oksana Grishina, wow, she placed 2nd in this Olympia, and she was just amazing. She placed 2nd, I think, 2 times prior to her winning her 4 consecutive wins. And during her reign as the Olympia champion, Oksana elevated fitness, professional fitness in on the Olympia stage to a new level that no one has ever seen before. It's not just her athleticism. She's a great athlete. Not just her physique, and she has a great physique. It got better every year, honestly. But it was her artistry that she brought to her routines. She could move you like, I don't know, it was like going to the opera or watching a beautiful piece of theater. Oksana could always affect the soul if you were to watch her perform. And just, I don't know if anyone is ever going to achieve that level of artistry in fitness again, perhaps, but she's just a very special person and a very special competitor. This year, in a Steve Harvey-esque moment, she was, Missy Truscott was announced as being in 2nd place. And so there was a moment there where Oksana had to feel she had won, and it was it's unfortunate that mistake was made because they almost immediately announced that was a mistake and that they took the second place award away from Missy, and they announced that the actual 2nd place finisher was Oksana. So Oksana received 2nd after being away for 2 years. She competed in the show injured as well. I believe she had an ankle injury. You would never have known by watching her perform. She did an amazing job. Missy I'll talk about Missy in a little bit, actually. So yes, those were my picks for male and female Comeback of the Year for the 2020 This Is Bodybuilding Year-End Awards. I'll move right into Female Competitor of the Year. So I had 4 choices, and I put this up to somewhat of a fan vote. Andrea Shaw, who was Miss Olympia. She was the first Miss Olympia since Iris Kyle back in 2014. We haven't had the Miss Olympia for bodybuilding at the Olympia stage since 2014, and this was its big return. And Andrea just was phenomenal. She didn't let anyone down. She had won the the Rising Phoenix World Championship, I think a month or so prior. That show was very, very close between her and Heli Trevina, who I actually, looking at pictures, and I only had pictures to look at and some video, I actually had Heli winning that show, but Andrea won it. And at the Olympia, Andrea was sharp. My criticism of Andrea was that she wasn't quite as sharp as she could possibly have been, but she was at the Olympia. And she was shredded with just at the right degree. You know, there was nothing grotesque at all about her conditioning or her physique at all. She's called Ms. Pretty Muscle on Instagram, and it's a very apt name for her. She's a beautiful woman, and her physique is gorgeous, and the muscle belly is just separation, just everything is there. She's an amazing bodybuilder, and she's going to be difficult to beat. I think she is. She made a great. She makes a great representative for that division, and she exemplifies what women's bodybuilding should be, in my personal opinion. And so she was one of the people I had in the top 4 choices for who would be the 2020 This Is Bodybuilding Female Competitor of the Year. Also on that list, and talking about great muscle, was, I'm going to mispronounce her last name, Sarah Villegas. Sarah. I am Sarah Fit on This Is Body on Instagram. Sarah won the women's physique division Olympia championship, and she was facing someone who I think people thought was unbeatable. You know, Shanique Grant, who had won 2 years prior, and beautiful muscle bellies on Shanique, great separation. Her conditioning was actually, I thought, good. You know, it wasn't off. You can't say she was off at all at this Olympia, or any Olympia. She has this genetic potential, and what she achieved, actually, it wasn't just potential. She reached her potential, sort of akin to a Flex Wheeler or a Linda Murray, if we're talking female bodybuilders. In other words, she looks like perfection, pretty much. But Sarah came along, and I said this to Sarah, I think, on Thursday night at the Olympia, going into the show. If I can say that Shanique is the Flex Wheeler of the women's physique division, then I would say that Sarah is the Dorian Yates of the women's physique division, and that she has more of that grainy look. Not grainy, but she's more shredded than most people get, and she has a back that is phenomenal. So she is someone who, you know, has got. You don't get to the Olympia and place in the top 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 without having phenomenal genetics. She has phenomenal genetics, but while her genetics may not be quite on the level of Shanique, for sure, I can't speak to Shanique's work ethic, but I can tell you that Sarah is phenomenal, and that she got the most out of her physique that she could possibly have gotten, and possibly surpassed anything that most people expected. But she was who I predicted was going to win this show, the Olympia, and she won it, looking absolutely amazing. And there's been some talk about her after the show by maybe people whose feelings were hurt that they didn't win the show. And I want to sort of address that. Some people were saying that she had a less feminine look. I don't think so. I think she has great lines, great symmetry, balance, proportion. I think her level of conditioning is what should be the measuring post. You know, that people in this division should be reaching if they want to win the Olympia, as she did. And I think she's just a phenomenal women's physique competitor and a tremendous champion. And I don't know, she might hold this title for quite some time. Also talking about holding titles for quite some time, one of the other top 4 women that I had in this division was Sydney Gillen. Sydney is just, she's on a new level. She won her 4th consecutive figure Olympia championship this year. No one has done that. Nicole won 4 Olympias in figure, I should say, but she did it non-consecutively. And I would say against competition that was not quite as unbelievable as what Sydney is facing. Sydney this year, I mean, the people who were in that top 5 were just all amazing. She beat just the athletes in the IFBB figure division are just their level of muscularity has just transcended anything I think that anyone thought was going to be possible for that division. These women are still unbelievably feminine, unbelievably beautiful, and you see them on stage. Sydney is a girl or a woman who, if you see her in person, yeah, she looks like she's in shape, of course, but she's petite. She's not a huge person at all. But man, when she gets on that stage and just everything comes to life and pops, and she just is pretty much untouchable. Latoria Watts placed 5th this year. She is someone who, the only person who I see who rivals Sydney for just beautiful muscle bellies, crazy proportions. But this year she was a little off in her conditioning, where Sydney was spot on. Sydney is the unquestionable queen of figure, I should say, in the IFBB Pro League. 4-time Ms. Olympia in figure, and I don't know when she's going to lose it. She's just a very, very strong champion. And last year she won this award for the 2019 This is Bodybuilding Year-End Awards. She won Female Competitor of the Year, and I was very tempted just to give it to her this year as well, and she would have been very deserving. But the 4th competitor, the top 4 in this category, was Missy Truscott from the fitness division. Missy won both the Arnold Classic, Miss International in fitness, and she won the Olympia Fitness Championship as well. Missy, to me, is someone who, sort of like for a few years before Oksana won her first title, she was someone who I think most people, I thought, and I think many people thought, should be winning the Olympia. And I think at least last year, I don't know, I've been feeling that Missy has been not placing quite as well as she should have been placing, and she was placing very well. So I think she is someone who could have had this title already, but not that the people who were winning were not good. They were amazing. But Missy, it was pretty much apparent at least a couple years ago to me, and possibly even before that she was, if not, yeah, I would call her the future of the sport. There are other girls in this division too, Ariel Kadar and Jacqueline Baker, who I think are also part of this movement, this sort of new breed that are coming up in fitness. And they are going to do tremendously well. I predict that will probably be the top. That's who I'm predicting will be top 3 for the Olympia in 2021. So I put it up to a fan vote, and the winner of the Female Competitor of the Year award was Missy Truscott. And I was very happy to see that the fans picked Missy. Not that I don't favor the others or I favor her more than them, but when I was at this year's Olympia, during that routine, her routine this year was just crazy, super athletic. And there was a moment in it when she's on top of a cage that was, I don't know how many feet, 8 feet high maybe. And she came off of that cage. She landed like she was Iron Man. It was unreal. It was just you have to watch that routine. To me, that won the Olympia. Not just the fitness Olympia. To me, that routine was like the crowning moment of this year's Olympia, or 2020 Olympia, was the most sensational moment. So to me, she won the Olympia. So I was very happy that she was picked. So then we'll move on to the final award, which was the Male Competitor of the Year. And again, I had a top four that I kept going back and forth in my mind who I was going to give this award to. There was Mamdo Abaspor, Chris Bumstead, Sean Clarita, and Harold Kelly. These were my top four. And I put it to fan vote. Harold Kelly won his second consecutive Olympia this year. He also won, I believe, his fifth consecutive Arnold Classic in wheelchair bodybuilding. Harold wins shows constantly and consistently, and he does so not by a little bit. He is a very, very impressive individual. Those guys in the wheelchair bodybuilding division just blow my mind. It's very moving if you actually watch those shows. And I suggest that everyone that goes to the Olympia, or the Arnold Classic, make sure you see the wheelchair bodybuilding championships at these shows, and any other show that offers them. Do not miss it, because these are some tremendously motivational individuals whose stories they share and will definitely move you. Well, Harold, of course, he's the most dominant champion in the history of that division, and he's sort of, I consider him like the Ronnie Coleman of wheelchair bodybuilding, and he's got amazing arms to match that comparison. So I had him as one of the top four. Sean Clarita, who I've mentioned before, who just looked so crazily good at the 212 Olympia and won that. Chris Bumstead, who I've mentioned before, I had him in here, and Big Ramy. Big Ramy, I talked about all these guys actually. So I put up to fan vote, and the winner was Chris Bumstead as the 2020 This Is Bodybuilding Male Competitor of the Year. And I was very pleased with that as well. Chris, I think I've been critical of Chris in the past, in past years. And I think it's because I saw, I didn't think he was quite at his potential, and he's so exceeded and very fast, very quickly, in 12 months' time, anything I thought he could achieve. And in doing so you see in this year's This Is Bodybuilding Year-End Awards, he won the Male Competitor of the Year, he won the Most Improved Competitor of the Year, and he was part of the Rivalry of the Year. So to me, yes, this was the year of Chris Bumstead, and who knows, next year could very well be that as well. If he does win next year's Olympia, that will be his third consecutive Classic Physique Olympia win, and no one has done that before. It'll be a record, and I don't think that anyone's going to be stopping him, but who knows? We never know in the world of bodybuilding. This is Michael Bryson. I'm wrapping up the This Is Bodybuilding 2020 Year-End Achievement Awards, and I hope you enjoyed this podcast, this episode. I'll be back again with some future episodes. I'm going to be doing more interviews. If you didn't check it out, check out the interview I did with George the Bull Peterson a couple weeks ago. George is awesome, and I'm going to be doing other interviews like that as well, where we'll converse about bodybuilding and as well as other things, and hopefully you'll find it entertaining and informative. Anyway, thank you so much. This is Michael Bryson. Peace out.